Hello, I'm Bernard Hickey from interest.co.nz and welcome to 90 at 9, brought to you in association with Bank of New Zealand. This is your morning briefing where you get everything you need to know in 90 seconds at 9 o'clock, starting now, on the day after the big collapse. South Canterbury Finance's collapse yesterday is effectively New Zealand's own Lehman Brothers. Back in 2008, Lehman Brothers collapsed and it was worth around about 0.5% of US GDP. South Canterbury Finance's lending is worth around about 0.8%. So in effect, it is bigger for New Zealand than Lehman was for the United States. About $400 per taxpayer is being paid out immediately to investors in South Canterbury Finance, but also to some creditors in South Canterbury Finance. They include Torchlight, the vulture fund run by George Kerr. And there are also some other winners, bond speculators, who bought South Canterbury bonds in the assumption the government would bail out them too. They're also being paid out, and so they bought those bonds cheaply and will get plenty of money back. The fallout has also happened on financial markets. The New Zealand dollar fell around about 1 US cent yesterday, and there was a partial failure of a New Zealand government Treasury bill auction yesterday. The aim was to raise $350 million for the week, and they only managed to get $305 million. However, Standard & Poor's came out and said that the collapse of South Canterbury Finance would not affect New Zealand's credit rating. And Bill English, the Finance Minister, said the government had moved to ensure there was plenty of time for the receiver to do its work and that the government would be completely in control of the receivership process. He said there was no need for any fire sale of assets. However, there is also some interesting fallout for the banking system. Remember, there's about $1.6 billion being paid immediately to investors. It's likely a good chunk of that will go straight back into the banks, particularly the big Australian banks. That will effectively mean the repatriation of some foreign lending back into New Zealand. We'll also see some spending, as some people use some of those cheques to spend money. However, there will be assets for sale. South Canterbury Finance owns Scales Corporation, which is New Zealand's largest apple grower and exporter. It owns HNZ, Helicopters New Zealand, the biggest helicopters owner, and owns a third stake in Dairy Holdings, New Zealand's largest dairy farmer. That means, in effect, that the government of New Zealand will be the owner of its biggest airline, its biggest apple company, its biggest dairy farm operator, and its biggest helicopters owner. Meanwhile, overnight, the Nikkei fell 3.5% as Japanese investors are very worried about the ability of the Bank of Japan to get the economy going again. However, the Dow, after some up and down during the day, eventually closed up a few points. I'm Bernard Hickey. That was 90 at 9, brought to you in association with Bank of New Zealand.